Joining us now, man of the hour, running for mayor in Richmond. He's the leading candidate for mayor. I predicted this back in April. Everybody said, oh, Fredericks, you're nuts. Once again, I'm spot on. Joe Morrissey, Truth to Power. Joe, good to have you with us, man.
John, good morning. And first of all, I have to apologize. We were out waving signs at drivers going by at 6:55, and we just finished, and I completely forgot. So, mea culpa to you and your staff for forgetting to call in.
Joe, I would rather than talk to me that you're out there waving signs at a busy intersection, doing what you need to do to win this race. This is a critical election. Truth to power, Joe. Now, Joe, we knew this was going to happen, right? It was just a matter of time. They got all the money. So the negative ads are now starting to hit. First, you had the negative TV ad by one of your council members of Richmond, who's in last place, basically, out of the top 5. Her negative ads on TV funded by those funding the campaign of Jack Berry and LeVar Stoney. Now we get 2 negative mailers coming out by Stoney. What's the reaction been, and what is your reaction?
Let's just drill down a little bit further. First of all, you've got a candidate, Michelle Mosby, who is between 1% and 4% in every single ward, with the exception of her own, where she's at 9%, running fourth. Her own ward running fourth. But what's happened is Jack Berry's campaign is funding her campaign. Her donors their supporters are putting money into her for one reason: to run the attack ads on me. So here's my reaction. Number one, you have the right to do that. I would defend her right with political expression to run what she wants. But let's just be clear and let's be truthful. As you said, the truth will set you free. Just let folk know where the money is coming from. That's part of the law in Virginia. You have to let folks know where the money is coming from. So that's the only reason she's in the campaign, to attack me. And my reaction is, okay, have at it. You know, since you started attacking me, your numbers have gone down and mine have gone up. So keep doing it. You know, that's number one. Number two, what did I say back at the end of the summer, John? We talked a couple of times. You up at the convention, and I said, look at the first person who goes negative. That's the person who's running last in the top tier, and that's LeVar Stoney. So he's gone negative against my opponent, Jack, and against me. And, you know, I think even his own campaign folk, even people in Richmond say, it's desperate now, you know. And they called him on it in the Richmond Times-Dispatch this morning. Not only is he desperate, but the ads are entirely misleading. But you know what? Once again, he's got the right to do that. I would defend his right to do that. However, I will not go negative. I never have. And he's moving even further south. So, you know, have at it.
Well, look, Joe, the Richmond establishment up there, the moneyed interests, the elites that have controlled the city, the developers for so long at the expense of the working class people that you represent in Richmond, truth to power. Look, they'll go to any lengths to get back in power. Let me give you an example. Chuck Richardson, a convicted heroin distributor, backing Jack Berry at a joint press conference. This guy got convicted for distributing heroin. I mean, children are involved in this. Joe, they'll do anything to keep the reins of power in their hands.
You know, what a great example, and it's true. I don't know if because your listening audience is all over the Commonwealth, John, but that's right. Chuck Richardson was not convicted of simple possession of heroin. We all have compassion for people who are addicted. We have compassion, and we should. He was convicted of distribution of heroin. He was convicted of a felony, went to prison for distribution of heroin. Now, what happens? Jack Berry goes to his home, and Chuck Richardson, because he needs the 5th ward. Chuck was the former council person in the 5th. So he holds a press conference with Chuck Richardson. And you know what 2 things were wrong about that. The Main Street Press, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, didn't report in that letter and that article that he had been convicted of distribution of heroin. Now, if I had gone to Chuck's house, and if I had held a press conference with Chuck Richardson, here's the headline. Morrissey gets convicted heroin distributor to endorse campaign. That would be the headline. Lead story. Former city councilman Chuck Richardson, convicted of distribution of heroin, endorses the Morrissey campaign. That's the opening paragraph. So, you know what, though? People are getting it now. They're realizing that you've got to be very, you got to read these things carefully, and that is the desperate tactics that they're going to. So, again, if the and then the Richmond earlier on, Jeff Shapiro of the Richmond Times-Dispatch quotes Chuck Richardson in his article, who the RTD absolutely excoriated when he was on council, and now he's their golden child. It's just disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful.
Because they don't want you in there, Joe, because they know that you're going to do the bidding of the people of Richmond, the middle class, working class people that you've been fighting for a very long time. You're not tied to the money interest. You're not tied to the elites. You have no allegiance to the cabal. You have no big donor moneyed interest. They can't go in your office and tell you what to do. You're not going to say one thing. You look at this Jack Berry campaign, the whole thing is a sham. The guy says one thing, he does something else. First of all, he's Republican. He doesn't even admit he's a Republican, for heaven's sake. Just, tell the truth. Look, I'm a Republican.
Right, exactly.
I'm for Joe Morrissey. It is what it is. Okay, tell the truth. Secondly, all right, he sends emails. He goes around saying that he's opposed to the taxpayer-funded baseball stadium in downtown Richmond. And then we get all these emails where he's sending emails to his crony developer friends that are funding his campaign saying, hey, that's just what I say in public. Hey, behind the scenes, buy this land, do this, do that. I'll be there for you. I mean, this is the kind of thing that people all over the country, including Richmond, they're rising up against. They've had it with this stuff.
They have. And you outlined and summarized it well. In a nutshell, for 10 months, Jack Berry says, I'm against this baseball stadium spending taxpayer dollars on the stadium. Fair enough, Jack. That's what you say. Then what happens? There's an expose done, and they realize he had been sending emails. He was the cheerleader for this program, the ballpark in the bottom. He was the main proponent. He was the head of the choir. And then he even did anything more deceptive. He said, I will ghostwrite quotes. We will attribute them to black people, and then we'll get the public behind us. And then he offers to use corporate jets to fly city council people to other cities, wine and dine them, and show them ballparks in those cities as a means to curry favor and get the council people's vote. And then he says, but let's not have large meetings because collectively they'll be against it. Let's divide and conquer and have small things. So he said one thing in public, I'm against the ballpark, but he was for 15 years, he was leading that charge. And then this comes out. This comes out. And I hope the Richmond Times-Dispatch is listening right now because what they said was wrong and you misled your reading public, which, by the way, is dwindling. You said, well, Jack Berry just followed Mayor Jones's lead. Wrong. Mayor Jones said he was the main cheerleader. And here's what I love. Bart Hinkle of the Richmond Times-Dispatch decries spending one dime of Virginia taxpayer money on a Redskin stadium. One dime. He says it's wrong. It's a failed policy. Look at other states. They fail. But the Times-Dispatch for a year was pushing the baseball stadium in the bottom. What a juxtaposition of inconsistency, contradiction, and hypocrisy. There, I said it. Truth will set you free.
Joe, all you have to do in this thing is follow the money. They don't want you in there because you're not beholden to them. That's the bottom line. You look at your donations through VPAC. They're always small donors. You don't hold the big fund fundraisers. You don't have the PACs. You don't have this other nonsense because you're not going to get the developer money because when they come in your office with a bad deal, you're going to throw them out. That's the bottom line. If it's a good deal, you're going to entertain it because that's been your history. If it's a bad deal for the taxpayers, you're going to throw them out. You don't owe them anything. Everybody else has a string. They're puppets.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, John. I was invited to a business group yesterday. They were developers. I sat around the table and I said to them, and there were 12 people there, and I said, listen, if you want this, this is my quote exactly. If you want to develop a mayor who's going to support your big shiny projects that a municipality should not be engaged in, like a Redskin stadium, a baseball park, a brewery, I said, gentlemen and ladies, I am not your candidate. Do not vote for me because I won't do that. And that's John. It's not only cathartic, but it feels so good to be able to be on the verge of going into office knowing you don't owe any paybacks to anybody. That's simple.
It's freeing, Joe Morrissey. Yeah. Don't you think? It's freeing.
Oh, it is. It is. I don't owe any money to any debts to unions, VEA, REA, to developers, to realtors, to the Democratic elitists. I mean, it's great. It's really, really feels good. And the only folk I owe an obligation to are the citizens. And I'm going to represent all 9 wards. There will be no revenge. There will be a reboot. There's some folk that didn't support me. That's fine. Will we reboot and say every decision, what's best for the citizens? And it ain't going to be for the developers. No, sirree.
Well, that's because you're going to stand up for the residents of Richmond that they don't have the money. Many of them lower middle income workers, many of them minimum wage workers. They struggle every day to make ends meet. They have no advocate in Richmond, Joe. They have no voice at all because they can't send any money. They can't do big fundraisers. They can't send around people on corporate jets. And that's really going to be the difference in this race. That's why I think your election in Richmond is so significant because, Joe Morrissey, you're the disruptor. You're the guy that's going to break the logjam, break the glass, truth to power. And that's why they don't want you in there. That's the bottom line. And these attacks we got 12 days. They're going to come every day, and they're only going to get worse.
Exactly. Hey, listen, I hope the Richmond Times-Dispatch does a story every day. I don't care. Let the attack ads go on. I'm saying publicly, I will not go negative. I never have. I never will. For 12 months, I've been telling people, this is what I will do as your mayor. That has worked. I've led wire to wire, and I'm not going to change and go negative. I'll leave that up to the, young, inexperienced folk like LeVar Stoney to do his negative bidding. I will remain positive, upbeat, tell people what I'll do. And, John, we'll talk on November 9th, mate.
Well, look, you're fighting, Joe. They don't call you that for no reason, Joe. You keep fighting. This is an important election. It's for the people of Richmond. You look at the disaster going on there with the schools and everything else, and the establishment wants no part of Joe Morrissey. That's why you have to win, and I'm going to do all I can to ensure that. And I want to thank Joe Morrissey for being with us today, running for mayor of Richmond. Joe, what's your website?
Website is Elect Joe Morrissey, www.electjoemorrissey, and hold on, I'll also give you www.electjoemorrissey.com, and the email is electjoemorrissey@gmail.
electjoemorrissey@gmail.com. Hey, Joe, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, John. Have a great day. My best to your listening audience.